So, yes, as I said, so we are doing this interview series. This is the 6th of the interviews that we are conducting at the moment. My name is Anja König. I lead Transformative Finance at EVPA. I'm also responsible for investing for development, and I'm responsible for the DACH region at EVPA. I'm here with our guest today, Eric Schuetz of GIZ, the lab of tomorrow. We are very much looking forward to the conversation today. But before we start the conversation, I'd just like to give a brief introduction about transformative finance and why we're doing what we're doing. At EVPA, we are convinced that we see all these systemic challenges that are out there. They are complex, they are interconnected. And we do believe that in order to address these challenges, it requires different kind of methods and solutions compared to how we have been operating, how we have been investing in the past. This is why we set out to help to make investing for impact more transformative. We launched the CoLab Award last year, which is to give visibility to system change leaders, system change practices, collaboration practices within the EVPA community. We'll share the link in a minute. It is really interesting to go through all these examples because you see the wide range of use cases, starting from value chain investing up to building ecosystems, doing open social innovations. We'll hear more about this tomorrow. Yeah, so it's a wide range of different use cases, but also different system practices, starting from system mapping over to strategies, investment strategies, to collaboration, monitoring. How do you monitor for system change and so on? So this is really about bringing visibility and facilitating on helping us to facilitate peer learning within our community. And with the Transformative Finance Lab, we had this idea that we need to go a step further in order to provide a space for co-creating financing solutions to systemic challenges. Actually, if you ask me what this Transformative Lab is all about, I wouldn't be able to tell you, because this is what we're here to find out more. We have this privilege with support of the Jacobs Foundation of being able to take some time out and have this design phase to explore what important design options are out there and which of them are suitable for our purposes. But what we do know is that it will be a facilitated space using methodologies of experimentation, of exploration. It will involve a wide range of actors along the spectrum of capital and beyond. So not only funders and investors, but also intermediaries and other important actors. And we are considering to run these labs according to different themes. We'll start with a first prototype on education, but effectively the methodology can then be used for any other theme or any other specific challenge that we want to look at. I said earlier we start prototyping with a certain sector. This will come at the end of the design process. So once we have a concept developed, in order to get there, this is for the purpose of developing a methodology that we can then use to different themes. We are conducting these interview series. It will continue until end of this month. We are reaching out to interested partners and participants to the lab itself. We are going to have a session with our partners at Impact for Breakfast on the 30th of March to collect a little bit of inputs also for our design, but also, just share a bit where we are in the process. We are going to have a design workshop in May. And then at the end of the day, we hope before the end of this year, we're going to have a first prototype where we actually run this lab for the first time. So we are really very happy about this process. We believe it goes in the right direction. And by talking to organizations, by talking to individuals like we have been doing here as part of this public interview series, we see there is resonance. We see there are other like-minded people in the space of impact, in the space of impact investing also, who have some very, very similar ideas or have already gathered a lot of experience. So we're very excited to talk to people like Eric Schuetz today. So I would like to welcome Eric to this session. We selected our interview partners because we were excited by one or the other aspect of it. What made really the Lab of Tomorrow of GIZ stand out for us was the very well thought through process, and you will see this later. They actually thought a lot about designing this process, and I think you also over the time you've optimized the process also
significantly.
And we will hopefully learn a little bit more about your learnings over that journey. But also because it has been applied to many challenges, and it involves, and the challenges were hosted or co-hosted together with some of our members as well. So there is already some very strong connections. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the methodology from Eric. We will have so Eric will take us, provide a short overview on the methodology, and we'll then dig a little bit deeper and ask a few questions. And after that, you are all very welcome also to ask your questions, keep them in mind or put them in the chat or just raise them later on. So there will be enough opportunity for that. But without further ado, thank you very much for joining us, Eric, and over to you. Shall I start the presentation?
Yeah, I guess hi from my side as well. Thanks for the introduction. And I guess really it's best to starting directly with the presentation, and I don't know, take 5 to 10 minutes, not 10, to introduce the lab.
Let me see, but I go to the first page.
Exactly. Our approach and methodology, and I think most questions should be.
I'm so sorry. I thought we were. Now you can all see the slides already. The surprise is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
We tested it before. So now that's okay. Here we go. So now you all see the first slide, the cover page.
Yes. Exactly. Like I guess you can already move to the second one. And that's then just as a start, a little bit of an overview of who we are and where we are at. And so the Lab of Tomorrow is being commissioned by the Federal Ministry for Economic Development or Cooperation Development in Germany, and is implemented by the GIZ. I guess in this round, most people have heard of the GIZ. So we're a project within the GIZ, and our goal, of course, is to create SDG relevant impact. And then we can already go to the next slide. Good to know for starters as well that we are sector agnostic and we are region agnostic, right? This is an approach that can be used independently of topic and region, of course. And as you've seen, we have 16 running processes or closed processes or programs, however you want to call it, on different topics. Those were around reduction of post-harvest loss, access to medication, tourism, circular economy, and so on. Nothing really on the finance sector, maybe as a little thing, but other than that, as you can see on the left, it's quite broad. And the most recent one is one we'll have a closer look on the next slides. That's protecting the biodiversity in Namibia or globally. And that's fine, you can go to the next one. And this will come on the next slides. So in general, hold on, one back, please. Exactly. So in general, this is the process, the run through of our process. Now the next one already, please. And but we'll first want to focus not on how we do it, but what we do. So what's the start and what's the result of each of those run-throughs? Next slide, please. And important to know is, right, we start with a challenge, with a development relevant challenge. And those challenges are not identified and not the process in general, not commissioned by us, but by anyone who sees this challenge and who wants to get a sustainable solution or identify, develop a sustainable solution to that challenge or specific part of it. This might be the GIZ, obviously, or other donors. It might be companies as well, or foundations like Trujillo, who initiate such challenges are in the end responsible for the conduction of the process with our support. And the result, next slide, please. Oh yeah, and by the way, each of those actors initiating those processes must have a local presence, of course. So one back again. Yes, that one. That is important, right? They need to be close to the country, close to the region where they want to have an impact and just know what the challenge is and have the right contacts, the right networks locally, because we want to be user focused, of course, and really be able to address the challenge at hand. And the result, in the end, are new marketable, profitable products that are brought to the market and have, on the one hand, obviously a positive impact on SDG relevant impact. And yeah, generate the funds to take care of themselves, to continue development, to scale to other countries or other markets as well, to really have as big as possible impact. And those products are being brought to the market by existing or newly founded companies. So yeah, they might have existed before, and this is now an addition to their product portfolio. More likely is though that a new partnership between different companies is created, or even joint ventures are founded, or startups, spin-offs, whatever. Next slide, please. And I mean, this won't come as a surprise to you, right? We're saying this is a specifically sustainable way of creating impact, because it's not dependent on donor money, right? There's no project 2 or 3 years, and after the money runs out, no one knows what happens. It is by design focused on a user need, because otherwise there won't be anyone buying the product. And so this makes the design from start on different. And yeah, so therefore, right, for those products, right, the target is clear. It must be a sustainable business model behind it, so that it can scale and take care and fund itself, and won't be dependent on continued donor money. What is special is that we, creating those solutions, focus on companies. So this is maybe the difference to the typical hackathon. This has been, especially during COVID times, right, being conducted. It's not entrepreneur or independent person based, but really grown companies. And then again, we don't focus on maybe a single company that has an idea and just incubate, but we bring together companies globally from especially European Union and the target region. As this brings a lot to the table, right? It brings technical expertise, resources, and knowledge, often from say the Western world, and it brings as well technical expertise, but especially, of course, knowledge about the culture, the needs, the market, and so on, and to the table from the companies in the region. And yeah, access to the target group especially, and bringing them together. That makes really the difference. And it's good to know as well, or to stress that we would call ourselves, I guess, SDG venture builder or innovation process or whatever, but often, or what we're aiming for is, of course, as well, adaptation, right? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we select companies that have a lot to bring to the table. We say maybe it's like a 70% solution, right? That only needs to be adapted to the market with the help of the companies that know the market well, right? They can form partnerships, and this reduces risk, right? This reduces time to market, and is therefore our approach. And yeah, in general, of course, the approach is design thinking inspired. No surprise, I'm guessing, here as well. And again, on the bottom, I wanted to stress that it's really not an incubation program for a specific or single company, but everyone coming into the program needs to have an open mind and bring something to the table, but be ready to throw everything overboard and use the expertise for something that really addresses the target. Okay, next slide. And then we'll just quickly go through one of the recent or right now running processes. I already mentioned Namibia. The topic is the protection of the biodiversity. It is threatened. In general, we all know what poaching is. The situation got a lot worse during COVID, right? For example, Namibia, this can be applied to every country with animals and plants, so the whole world. And But yeah, especially developing world is dependent on tourism often for their income, right? And those now broke away and poaching has increased. And yeah, this is a big problem, but there's a lot of potential inherent as well, business potential, as we would say. For example, I mean, the market for virtual tourism, I guess, is a growing market anyway. So this can or should be the really kickstart for such solutions, right? That are as well more inclusive, because not everyone can travel due to physical challenges, due to financial restrictions. Traveling physical tourism is not the most sustainable kind of tourism anyways. So, right, 3-step approach. Step 1 is hold on, one back. And please, is the understand phase. No worries, no worries. It's really the understand phase, in which we take some time to analyze the challenge, right? We bring in experts, we bring in the target groups, talk to them, what is needed, what is missing, what are the potentials, and based on this, from the challenge, define a business or several business opportunities in this size that they can actually be tackled by a team of 4, 5, 6 companies. Right.
For this one, specifically on the biodiversity, can you just give the example of the challenge that was formulated?
So the challenge is really how to protect biodiversity and how to increase virtual tourism, or how to increase the potential to virtually interact with the local ecosystem.
Okay.
Like and then for those business opportunities, or you can as well say sub-challenges, yeah, we defined, actually, I don't know them exactly by heart, but in general, right, there's different target groups we can address here. And those are tourism companies in general that need solutions so they can, yeah, provide offers to their customers. And by the way, this is a very special process here. Typically, the target group is are people in the country, right, that have a specific need. In this case, the target group are potentially European tourists, right, or European tourism companies. But for them, providing an offer, providing this experience, people from the ground are needed, right, to provide the input. Local tourism guides, local tourism companies, anyone who can create input. So therefore, in this case, the target group might be a European company, but the beneficiary are people at site who then get jobs thanks to the new income streams being created. So for once, then the challenge or the sub-challenge, the business opportunity, is provide something to tourism operators. Second challenge, I mean, best life experiences, because yeah, if you have a life experience, of course, more work is needed on site than if you just have, I don't know, an interesting documentary created once over a month, and then yeah, there's no need for support locally anymore. Second sub-challenge or opportunity is then create products directly for tourists. So bypassing tourism operators. And by the way, not only tourism operators, it might be zoos as well. You see here Zoo Berlin as a partner. They are supporting partner as well, because they look for such chances to, yeah.
That is very cool. I hadn't realized you were partnering with them on this one.
Yeah.
Such
Berlin
a
and Zoo
range
Leipzig.
of actors, yes. Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it could be a potential income stream for them, right? And you just imagine, right, you get to go to the zoo in the future. Of course, you see the animals behind their fences, but you don't really get an insight into the real world still, right? For many, this is Disneyland, and the zoos as well told us you can read about the real situation, right? But like less than 10% really read the signs. So what do you do to, well, increase income, but especially show people, right? Get them into the right mindset to see that there is a challenge, and yeah, this is Disneyland and the real world looks different. And so whatever is more immersive would be a big opportunity for those zoos. And another thing, by the way, but I think it's good to having this more concrete. Whenever you go into a zoo in Germany, at least you pay at least €1 for biodiversity protection product. You can increase this amount, but you don't know what happens, right? You have no idea where this euro goes. You don't know what happens. So this is another thing, right? Another of those sub-challenges, how to create the interactiveness of those potentials to donate money as well. One of our participants is Treedom. I don't know if you've heard of them, but you can buy a tree This tree is given to a local farmer, he plants it, and the future profits from the tree being available. Also, of course, it stores CO2, has many positive effects on the ecological system. And what you do is you get regular photos from your tree growing. That is a lot more fun, of course. You can comment on the photos, you can network with other people having sponsored trees and so on. It's a lot more fun. And I mean, this is a solution those zoos would welcome very much as well. I mean, they have apps, right? This could be an addition to their apps and just increase interaction. So those are solutions you could think of, right? And those are the kind of sub-business potentials we defined. 5 different ones. Gamification is another one, right? How to interact via games with ecosystems. Can as well be just an experience you pay for. It can increase your interest in donating money and so on. Right, and yeah, so right, we define those business opportunities. So in each of those processes or phases, we define the business opportunities and find the right partners. Partners that are interested in supporting such measures, partners that are just looking for solutions, really, like the zoos, like tourism companies that are really dependent on good new products, and that are the customers in the future, obviously, right? This is another way how we kickstart, how we ensure that our teams can really prosper afterwards. Okay, and here, but yeah, you see Trujillo Foundation is involved, of course, which is an EVPA member. So next slide now, please. So the next step is obviously the one where the magic happens. We have conducted a 4-day, very intensive innovation sprint in the region. So in this case, it will be in Windhoek, close to Windhoek, end of March, 28th to 31st to be precise. And really, we have hand-selected companies creating teams based on their expertise, right? Again, technological expertise. So here's virtual reality, drone, 360 filming companies. We have African gamification companies. We have media companies like the ORF. We have artisans, obviously tourism operators, app and software development companies, and freedom tourism donation platforms. Create the right kind of team setups, put them in the teams depending on the business opportunity, and then guide them with strong coaching through this process. Right, we give them the chance to get an exchange with their potential customers, with their target group, and after those 4 days, what the outcome is right, to see the graphics are like all the ideas spreading, then you have to focus on the one you want to really follow up on in the end. And at the end, there's a business model sketch. We would call it a business model sketch. What is presented for the first time in front of the potential customers, VCs, angels, and potential other supporters. The next slide, please. What is, by the way, a development over the LOT that has been established or had been established like 6-7 years ago. We don't stop here, right? Many hackathons, whatever, stop after the creation of the ideas. We provide an incubation phase afterwards as well. And this incubation phase includes mentoring, coaching, potential in-kind service, access to services, for example, legal support. But especially, we provide a pitch event at the end again. So those teams then pitch their ideas, their models, their products in front of, again, right, customers and so on. Because, and this is then another thing why it's good that we're talking, we as a GIZ have quite some trouble funding those actors directly, right? It's newly founded companies or not yet even founded. They need funds quickly. We are slow, and this really doesn't work. So it really, by design, we don't give funds ourselves, but we connect them to the right actors that can support those teams that are interested in investing, that are interested in the solutions being applied to them. So therefore, right, they would pay for services potentially. And as well, here it comes in handy that, it's not entrepreneurs, it's companies we are speaking to, and they have resources themselves, of course, and can follow up or invest themselves in the solutions and bring them to market. So but this is right, a challenge for us as well. This is pre-seed or seed, And we cannot give the seed funding. Therefore, yeah, we're trying to create the network needed for them to make sure that it works, or that those solutions actually hit the market. So next slide, please. And I think this is the second last slide I'm having. Then we're through. Those are 3 examples of companies. Oh, it's in German. I realized I translated it to English. Now I realize I apparently didn't save before I sent it to Anna, but Anja. But in general, maybe you've heard of Wingcopter. They have in an earlier process, or Lab of Tomorrow process in Kenya, developed their business model. I've been working in a team with DHL and fixed their partnership. They got their first project. Back then it was in Tanzania. Now they actually moved this project to Malawi, got first funding, founded the company. And by now they've actually collected $30 million in investments. Thanks to them, 1.2 million people can be rapidly covered with medication. So I mean, that's not the amount of people they serve daily, but it's potentially to serve them, and they have been underserved before. And yeah, they've scaled to 8 different countries meanwhile. And by the way, not only developing countries, Ireland, Scotland, US are companies as well, but everyone who has difficult to access rural areas can use such solutions. Another challenge or example is Maischemets from the same lab. Actually, they provide a platform via which micro pharmacies can order original and what's the word? Not cheap, affordable medication, exactly. And yeah, they reach 130,000 people per month now in 6 countries. So that's really a huge success. And there's others as well, like Romala Energy, not that big yet, but you can see the potential. It provides one back, please. No, the other direction, exactly. One further. No. Romala Energy is.
I know, but it's, oh, sorry, it's not there, huh?
No, the one further, one back. Sorry.
Yeah,
the one we saw was right.
Yeah, we're improving our German.
Yeah, it was German, unfortunately. This one, so stop.
Sorry, yes, I don't know what happened there. It seems quite sensitive. As soon as I do something here on the participants or the chat, it seems to move the slide forward. I apologize.
No worries, but we need to go one further. The one after this one is the one I was still talking about. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we spoke about Wingcopter and Maischemets. Sorry that this one is in English, in German. I'm not sure why. But the last example I wanted to mention is Romala Energy. They provide solar-powered ice machines in general to milk farmers in Uganda. What is interesting about them, this is really a joint venture between 2 German and 2 Ugandan companies. The company is founded in Uganda. And yeah, by allowing rural farmers to cool their milk, actually, they allow them to increase their output by 25%, because before they could not milk their cows at night. Now they can, and it's around 600 liters per month per farmer extra, and they do this via a profit sharing model. So of course they rent out kind of the systems to the farmers, and 50% of the profits goes to the company to repay their system, and 50% goes to the farmer. So everyone wins. And yeah, we reduced the loss or increased availability of nutrition. Yeah. And now to the last slide. Thanks. Now kind of looking back, right? I mentioned all the positive impact those ventures had or can have, or I mean, their products obviously, on people, local people, the ones we actually want to reach. But it's clear, like with all of those approaches, those were, you saw maybe the little unicorn on the top right. We have, of course, a couple that work really well. We have some that don't, right? You have those 90% probably won't make it of startups, right? And I think our quota is quite fine, but obviously most won't. And but it's important to know, or just to note, that even before relevant impact happens or is created, just by putting companies together, just by having them getting the insights on markets, on cultures, on needs, creating networks, right? In general, one of the goals of the BM site was activating the German or the European private sector, having them think about those markets at all, right? So that knowledge can be transferred, that those resources are invested in those markets as well. And as well, yeah, by the beginning, right, we create insights that are valuable for the ones that started the process and that are available for everyone that participated. Creating awareness about needs, about potentials, right? Those reports are available on our webpage as well. So yeah, there's a couple of good steps on the way that we can guarantee for. And then in many cases, real impact is happening on site, but of course not always in the amount we would aim for. But yeah, that's the risk everyone has to take here, right? That's what it makes it a little more difficult to invite companies for this, right? Because they're not exactly sure what the outcome will be. But I can say that approach, really telling them, okay, this is not your CSR. We're not approaching your CSR, right? But we're presenting a business opportunity to you here, is what actually what works and is understood.
Very interesting. Yes. Is there another slide?
That's it.
Okay, then I stop sharing so we can see each other. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Eric, for the introduction. And maybe a good opportunity to introduce my colleague, Peter, who is here with us now.
And I would also just like to take the opportunity to apologise as well. Pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong this morning when I tried to join this call. So I hopefully took all the bad luck for everyone else. That's the only thing that I can say. So thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. I was also just going to ask one very, very brief follow-up question just on the last thing you mentioned, if possible, Eric. So you mentioned that going to these companies and not going to their CSR department, but saying like business opportunity. Now that you've had a few cycles of actually going through this process and it's a bit more.
Peter, we can't hear you.
Suddenly anymore.
We had that yesterday as well. Huh? It was a bit of a disconnect. Okay, so you take the question back and you try again with another technology. Yeah, there seems to be something wrong, but maybe it's because he's normally based in Hamburg, and now he's in London, back in London. So maybe it's the bad weather that influences the connection. Well, while we wait for him to come back, I guess I'm just guessing what he may be aiming at, but really it's a question. I found this quite interesting, as you're saying. Peter, do you want to try again with your question? Because I was about to ask the question. Let's see what's the same one. Ask your question.
Yeah, it was only going to be a brief one. So it was just, you mentioned getting the companies and offering this kind of business opportunity rather than CSR teams. And I just wondered, now that you've had a couple of iterations and you've gone through the process and you can point to the amazing outputs, has that become easier now? Do you find it's a different conversation with those companies? Do they get it more? Is it similar, or is it still the same kind of starting from?
It definitely gets easier thanks to the examples we have, right? But it's still a challenge, actually. I must admit, it's not that easy for everyone to understand this approach in general, despite all the efforts we put in communication material, I must admit. And yeah, as well, it still is an open process, right? We cannot promise anything, right? It's a challenge. We have to talk to everyone. It's not that we can send a flyer around and it's done. We have a good flyer, I believe, but it always leaves questions or misunderstandings. I must say it's not that easy.
I find this quite interesting that you're saying you're talking to the private sector and you have to convince them about an entrepreneurial approach. You as the government entity, government agency have a hard time convincing the private sector about the fact that this is an innovation process that you cannot guarantee for the results. What is wrong there with the private sector?
I mean, it's still a risk they're taking, right? Maybe can be more precise in who we're talking to. Originally, it has been many big companies as well, right? Bayer, Merck, and so on. And right now, we're focusing more on mid-sized and smaller companies, actually, because the bigger ones, of course, they have a lot of potential. But in the end, this is such a small thing for them that they are fine with sending people and it's good input, but they are less focused on following up on what is being created. I must say. The smaller and bigger ones, the smaller and medium ones really have to check, is this worth the risk, right? Because we're not supporting travel cost, obviously, right? Because people, especially like in Namibia, right? People shall not come because it's a paid trip for safari. They shall want to see, they shall see the opportunity, right? And be ready therefore to pay. But nevertheless, travel costs, time, and so on, it is an investment. And of course, they want to be as sure as possible that it's a worthwhile investment. And we cannot guarantee this, right? But the examples definitely help.
What is the advantage then of involving smaller companies if you're saying they have to watch out for the funding is more important, or the success is more important to the smaller companies? But still, from what I understand, you are now focusing increasingly on smaller companies rather than the big players. What's the advantage then?
Really, the smaller companies have explicitly decided on, also checked, do I see the business potential? And if they've done it, they've invested relatively much for them, so they stick with it.
Once they have, okay. So they are committed. Once they're in, they're in. Whereas the other ones, it's just not important enough, and there is no follow-up.
Yeah, and I mean the level of, the hierarchy is of course a lot smaller, right? While the bigger companies, right, you have people that are being set, of course, have a specific position, have their general work, and it's much harder for them to reserve time for these new elements than for the small companies that really decided to go through with this and already have sent someone typically that is interested in following up on a specific topic or is involved much. Right, not to say we're still happy about involving bigger companies, but to a smaller part, because they really see it a little more as CSR and are happy to support, but not dependent on anything coming out of this. Because showing their brand, showing their face is for them often enough. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yes. Peter, you have some. I would have a question on the funding. That seems quite an interesting topic here in this case. So if I understand correctly, you have a host, a challenge host, like TUI Foundation, for example. What funding do they cover, and what funding do the private companies cover, and where do you still lack money throughout the process?
Really, it's not, if a process is being conducted or program, then it's not ours. It's from the one really conducting it. It would be TUI, it's their process, their program, and in general, their costs. What we do is co-financing for up to 40% of the costs. So to make clear, okay, we are the junior partner, depending on our budget available, which is not, which is restricted as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so whoever wants to conduct.
But you provide the methodology and you provide some co-funding, and maybe also the facilitation. Is that something that you provide?
We're not facilitating the processes. We always hire a local design thinking agency for the conduction. This is part of the development efforts as well. For once, those local people, of course, know the market best, but we want to give local agencies a chance to grow with this instead of flying in anyone from Germany, which wouldn't make much sense, right? It's not always that easy, honestly, because they're like a market of Namibia. There's restricted availability. Very restricted availability of coaches and so on. But we found a partner, and in this case we looked in South Africa and Zimbabwe for the right kind of personnel. So we are really just consultants for the conduction to anyone who wants to do it, but the real one they should be working with is a local agency that knows the way about those kind of processes.
That is interesting. So, okay, so coming back to the question of funding then we would have an organization such as TUI Foundation funding 60% of the, if you fund 40%, maybe you,
up to, really, I need to be careful, depends on what we have available, but this is the
best case. No? So you provide a little bit of co-funding in order to what, to make it the entrepreneurs within the challenge hosts easier to engage? Or do they need the GIZ funding to start the process?
I mean,
Is
it costs, the conduction of the process obviously costs money, right? For hiring all the facilitation.
Yeah.
And those are the costs, and those we support.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just wondering if the challenge host is a large company or even a foundation.
Okay.
You would think maybe they have the money if they really want to do this. What do they? Where are the incentives? So, what barriers do you try to overcome with your co-funding?
This is really like, there's no general answer to this. It depends on the situation. But I mean, as well, I mean, it's in our interest to support this, right? If this helps convincing someone to really go forward with it. Yeah. And I mean, everyone has restricted budgets, right? The foundations as well, then we can just be of help if that is the last part needed.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether it has something to do with facilitating the entrepreneur who needs to make the case with its own own management, and saying, actually, you know, the GIZ people, it's good to have them on board anyway, because the government entity, that's always also important signal and partner. They know the market. And in addition, they provide some co-funding. So for us, it's just a small amount of money, and we get their support and help. So that could be an internal argument. Okay, very interesting. And they would cover the process as such, but not the funding of the prototypes at the end of after the ideation phase.
I mean, it's for them to decide, right? I can say that the GIZ typically cannot. And most of the processes we have are started by GIZ actors. So they have the same problems as us when we conducted the first ones ourselves. But I mean, of course, everyone is free to support the ventures in the end, but it is good to include more actors, of course, right? I mean, depending how big you made it, it can be that 6 ventures, and it's a typical size, 4 to 6 ventures, and that might be too much for your budget as well. So we include, of course, as many interested actors as possible. And I mean, the sums required at the beginning are not that high, right? And this is really something you can do, but on the other hand, risk is high, and the solutions have to be tested, right? Piloted, and so on. Companies have to be founded, so it's very early stage. So of course, for smaller budgets, but high risk at the beginning, as it is. And I mean, as we see it, this is a typical funding gap. See it and afterwards gets easier, but this very start is quite a challenge. So we have to have the right actors with us, and often this is really the playground for foundations and angels sometimes, in my experience. Or other GIZ is one of the potential investors still, right? If it makes sense. Because of in-kind services, we always have the GIZ actors working in those fields with us in those pitches typically.
And then obviously you have the leveraged matching platform. Is that something that you use for this purpose, or?
Actually, that is the leveraged is in front of us, kind of comes before us, right? The leveraged is the matching platform between challenges in single companies that already have a solution to the challenge.
Okay.
That's the idea, right? And if this one actor that has the solution is not existing, then kind of the lab is the next step, where you say, okay, obviously there's no one solution available, then let's bring actors to them and develop it.
Interesting. Peter, you want to ask? Otherwise,
Well, I'm also aware I joined late, so I just, rather than take up time, I just mentioned it might be interesting to take Catherine's question. I think I don't know if you want to.
Yes, I was actually about to. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
It's on a nice point around what the challenges are and that piece, and it's quite interesting that you've got this leveraged platform first, and then you're feeding through challenges. But are there other sort of backgrounds on how you gather and source those initial challenges at the start?
We're really just bringing out the word about our approach and right, there's enough actors out there who have challenges, and they should hear about us, and let everyone know who should be aware that this is an approach he or she might want to use to overcome this challenge. So kind of, we're not sourcing challenges in that way, right? We're just spreading the word that here is an open source, by the way, approach. Use it if we can. We are supporting, and this might be the best way really to come to a sustainable and impactful solution.
Interesting. Catherine, does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks a lot. Part of it, at least. And then for the project that you showcased here, where you also have the zoo, for example, collaborating. So how do you source then the parties, the actors that are collaborating on a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we look for any kind of actor that is could play a role. So potential customers, the potential beneficiaries, and so on, and we call them and tell them, here, isn't this something for you? Can you first give us an interview so we get more insights into the challenges from your point of view, and in that way collect partners. Of course, we make our research and actors active in those areas anyways, like then foundations and whoever is I mean, there's often enough networks around such challenges available, right? And then those we spread the word and often address specific actors directly and ask them if they would want to be part of the team, if we can interview them.
Interesting, thanks. And can you just say again the name of the platform that you have that is also matchmaking between challenges and solutions?
Leverist.com. I mean, you can put it in the
Leverist. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm just putting it in the
thanks.
In the chat. Oh, there's a different topic. Does anybody else have a question or a comment or a suggestion, maybe even for Eric?
Yes, good morning. I have a question, or well, I would like to introduce myself first. So good morning, my name is Ana Trujillo. I work as a student assistant with the German-Colombian Chamber of Commerce, and I'm finishing my studies in mechanical engineering, and I am researching about how to accelerate the energy transition through innovation. And one of my final goals with this thesis that I'm writing is to propose an innovation challenge. I was reading more about what you did in Mexico. I would like to know if there is any possibility to get a closer look about what you did, how did you organize, and how did you define the challenge? Yeah, maybe there is any possibility to talk also with the Colombian-German Chamber of Commerce. I have the support from the Direction of Sustainability and Education. And yeah, I'm really interested about innovation challenges, change through innovation, and yeah.
Yes, Eric, do you want to leave your contact details maybe, if you like, Anna, I can also then separately introduce you to Eric after the session, because I have your contact details. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
In general, right, you can get the basic information how this is being conducted on our webpage, and there's then the chance, of course, as well to get in touch with us, including a couple of questions regarding the challenge you see. And this is what we're trying, right? Our webpage, by the way, is being there will be a relaunch in a couple of months. The webpage right now is we're not so happy with it, but yeah, we'll be introducing kind of quiz, right? If you have a challenge, we try to find out as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, if this is something where the Lab of Tomorrow is applicable for, to not have any misunderstanding. And there's a kind of questionnaire there already, where you can put in your ideas, the background of the challenge you see, and then we can let you know if this is something where a lab could be a way to come to a solution.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, there is any possibility to contact you some days for getting a closer look about what you did in Mexico, right?
By the way, maybe I can say something about Mexico. This is actually an interesting case. I mean, everything was as planned, right? problem analyzed, companies brought together, and solutions being created. The problem was, though, it was about around access of solar power created energy. Sorry, I'm not in the topic, and to the markets by a specific. Well, I can't explain it that well. The problem is during the pilot phase of those solutions, the legislation was changed in that way that all the solutions were irrelevant or not working anymore, unfortunately. So this is a negative example. Bad luck, you could say, because I mean, that's the good thing about the GIZ, right? We are in touch with the government. Usually we extra include them because those contacts are good for the government. It's good for the government to see the challenges that those companies have to deal with and help overcome them. That's one of the big advantages that we have over other innovation processes, I guess, is our network here. But in this case, it didn't help. I mean, they helped overcoming challenges, but yeah, it made the solutions that were created irrelevant, unfortunately. So there is nothing active here anymore.
Okay, yeah, good to know.
But still, you have the benefits that you mentioned in the beginning, such as networking, putting people together, exposing them to a new market. So it's not all lost. Huh? It's not a complete failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And just following on that point, I really like this, and we've noticed this in one or two of the interviews. Well, I say I've noticed this in one or two interviews we've had so far around what these other impacts that these processes have that are really positive, even if nothing ever comes out that you imagine at the end. There's a lot of positivity in building networks and such like that. I just wonder, do you measure those, or is there any kind of measure on those successes, or is it just a kind of taken that we know it's a good thing to do, therefore we'll do it? Yeah, if you've got any thoughts on that, it'd be great.
Absolutely. And we only started to really kind of officially ask or collect feedback from the participants in a structured way in the last processes. And yeah, of course, we're saying, okay, well, are you happy with the participation? And we can say so far it's about 90% of the companies say, okay, this was worthwhile already. Despite if we are able to place a product at the market at the end or not, because of the networks, because of the insights. But of course, actually, it's interesting now while I'm thinking about it, while I'm speaking about it. Of course, I don't want them to be too happy at this point already, because yeah, no one, and this is one of the discussions we have, I mean, why we talk to everyone before we allow them into the program. Right, this is not a networking event, and if you're just there for the networking, then you're the wrong participant. So we're making sure of this, right? That you really, really want to bring something to the market. Otherwise, this is not for you. But yeah, the general, we get very good feedback after the end of the program. In any case, from the company, so they were happy, and we have several companies that participate more than once.
Yeah, it's just really interesting that point about you don't want it to be almost too good a networking event, but you need them to be there with, to be there to do things as well. I think it's a really interesting balancing act as well. I don't know timing wise, but I had one kind of question that kind of has come up once or twice before around, you're obviously onto, you've done this over a number of years, and so that what's the kind of biggest changes, or what looks so different with your most recent iteration to when you first started? What's the?
I guess that those are two main changes from the first one. But the first one, 2015, was a one-day workshop in Berlin. That was the lab tomorrow. So it increased in both directions from the ideation sprint, right? A lot more well-defined challenge and business opportunities. And yeah, don't leave the companies right afterwards alone. They were never left alone afterwards, but there was no structured approach in supporting them, and that we have, right? So grew from this relatively small one to at least 9-month approach, which we cover. That's the first thing. And yeah, the second thing was that the idea at the beginning was much more that the GIZ supports financially those businesses as well at the beginning. But yeah, we saw that this is not working well, and had to skip that, and yeah, really focus on creating a good network making sure those businesses created are investment ready when they leave, as investment ready as possible when they leave the process or the program, so that they can get the needed support from the market, not from us afterwards. Those were the biggest changes, I'd say.
On that last one, do you do anything specifically to make them investment ready? I mean, they obviously, it's an investment also in a joint venture in a sense, isn't it? What's the role of the joint venture partners in helping to find follow-up finance? Can they provide some of it themselves, or how much of it has to be raised externally? And if so, how do you go about this? I mean, you have this leveraged platform. Also, GIZ internally is thinking about developing matching platforms, or has been thinking about this for a long time. Are there other providers maybe that you're reaching out to and saying, we have these prototypes developed, please fund them now? How do you go about finding funding?
I mean, we are trying to make them investment ready really during the incubation phase already, right? Our implementer of the incubation, for example, SeedStars, they know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right, and they're preparing them accordingly so that they have their pitch deck ready in the end, that they have a structure that is actually investable.
Yeah.
If needed, of course. Like we said, those are companies that have the resources as well, so they're less dependent on investments, but usually they are dependent on them as well. And the incubation phase enables them to be ready then to receive those kind of investments as well. And yeah, of course, what we do as well afterwards. So I mean, something we're developing right now as well is kind of a deal book for once. So we have a representation on our webpage for them now, right? And we'll have a PDF printable version in the future as well, which we can use for when we speak to, which happens regularly, obviously, to potential investors, general ones, and that are active in specific areas. So we spread the word afterwards as well, and let them know about the potential that there is. And those kind of communication services we support those teams with afterwards as well.
But you don't want to put them on the leveraged platform, for example.
The leveraged is nothing like that, right? But leveraged, and the leveraged, what there is opportunities where GIZ projects, for example, ask, this is the challenge, which company can has a solution, right? So there's no companies, no products available on the leveraged, only challenges. And to the challenge, you as a company can say, okay, I have the solution and can come in. But there's no investments provided there, generally.
But why not?
Just a matchmaking.
Why don't you just list your prototypes on leveraged, and then you can point investors to it and say, please, here are the investment opportunities of the prototypes that we created.
Maybe this can, but this is not the idea of leveraged yet. At this point,
not yet. Okay.
Really, just matching.
Sorry.
Anyone who needs a product with providers.
I got that. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But we let, of course, our teams know. Look at that. Maybe there's more applications for you.
That's a new idea, or maybe include this into one of the matching platforms that you're about to create.
Exactly, yeah.
Obviously, you're also creating products and companies and organizations in other areas, and maybe there's a case for bringing this all together and saying these are the GIZ investment opportunities for you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We do that, right? We invite those GIZ actors then as well to pitches, if possible. So
exactly.
Directly.
Very interesting, Eric. Thank you so much for your insights and sharing this with us. Also, the presentation, we'll all put this online, also the recording of the session. And we will also follow up with you separately and see where we can cooperate further between EVPA and the Lab of Tomorrow specifically, but more generally also with GIZ overall, because there seem to be so many areas of common interest that I think it makes sense to look at it a bit from a broader perspective in terms of a partnership. Valeria, thank you very much for joining the session. Just some message here. Just to point out to the upcoming sessions that we'll have under the TFL series. So there is one on open social innovation, which people calling in from Germany know quite well, because it has been a methodology that has been applied under the COVID V versus virus hackathon has been very, very well known. Also Update Germany and several other processes in agriculture and food and plastics and so on, and schools also, it has been applied. So really interesting. That would be tomorrow with Philip van der Wippel. Next week we have again GIZ, but a different part of GIZ, the Global Leadership Academy, really interesting session. We have another one with the Global Innovation Lab on climate finance coming up. And we have another one coming up on future thinking. If you are interested to know more about future thinking and how this relates to the field of impact finance and about designing the challenges to make use of future opportunities, then this is the one for you. And we'll have an Impact for Breakfast coming up on the 30th of March, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it will be all on our website. If it's not there already, please register and join us for the upcoming session. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much.